Hi, this is Michelle Dematia, and this is my recording of my older adult oral video presentation on Erikson's stages of the theory of psychosocial development. For my presentation and for my older adult interview, I focus on the fifth developmental stage of Erikson's theory, which is identity versus identity confusion, also known as the adolescent years. This stage basically focuses on the sense of self and the identity of a person and what they're kind of going through internally, as well as what they're learning and retaining in their social environment, and how that kind of creates the sense of self moving forward. And this stage focuses on, again, like the individual as well as the social environment. You're typically contemplating ideas for your future goals, the type of person that you want to be, the company that you want to keep, and how you relate to your environment and how your environment relates to you. Some important experiences that were evident in my interviewee during this stage of development was that there was a major change in his social environment, which brought him out of his private school that he had attended his entire childhood from kindergarten on. And he was leaving that environment and moving on to a new high school, which was actually a public high school on another side of town. So he was going to be in a new environment with different peers, with different school faculty, and it offered him a new beginning from his past identity. And the important experience along with that new beginning was that he was going to have the ability to create a new self-identity, that he had actually gotten himself into more of a reputation of being a fighter. So growing up in the city that he grew up in, it was evident and it was actually almost required to be able to protect yourself and to have a reputation of someone that was able to stand up for themselves and that wasn't going to be intimidated by others. So my interviewee, had experienced somewhat of an identity of a person who made others fear him, and he realized in this stage of his life that he had been identifying as someone that he didn't intend on being, and that a lot of his social relationships were based on him protecting them from others or them being fearful of him. So they had him in a relation like a friendship or an acquaintance relationship because of fear, and he realized that he had to search for himself, which was a direct quote from him. And his role in the home in that time was to kind of develop a skill set of his own, to learn a trade and to be able to bring something like back to the home, and as well as learning a trade for himself, not only so he could earn for the family, but so that he can kind of look forward to the future. So he knew during this developmental time that he had some major self-realization decisions to make. Some challenges that went along with this was that he had to kind of distance himself from some of the relationships that he had created over the years in his hometown, in his social environment, that were all unhealthy for him, that he knew if he kept those relationships too close to him, that it would be too difficult to kind of adapt this new identity that he was seeking. An accomplishment that had also been a challenge initially was to be taken more seriously in school. Previously, because he had identified as like a fighter and as a person of fear, he had been a leader, but in a negative way, as he actually stated in the interview, that he felt he abused his leadership skills by his peers, by goofing off in school, by not taking his grades seriously, but also feeling as though he had not been given a fair chance by his teachers and by the nuns in the school in which he was raised in. So high school offered him a new opportunity to prove to teachers that he was intelligent, that he was capable of learning, and that he was motivated to do better. And he did accomplish that. He received great, feedback from some teachers that gave him motivation and praised him for the skills that he did have. So he made a conscious decision to study and to remain out of trouble, and to control his temperament, which had definitely been a challenge during this time, as he had been so comfortable in showing his emotions through fighting. I also shared a quote from my annotated bibliography talking about identity formation during this stage, where it's described to transform into adolescence as a person no longer requires the mannerisms and likeliness of others, but develops a sense of individuality and uniqueness. Here is the discussion of the crisis that my interviewee kind of was dealing with at the time. The crisis of stage 5 is identity confusion and identity formation. Like I said, it was a difficult time for him because he had developed this sense of self that was based on fear, that was based on a reputation in his community that he had built over the years. Also carrying along the identity that his family had, as generationally they had lived there several generations. So he, kind of identified as a product of his home and his family environment and also his community. But he was in a very, very difficult place as he was trying to branch out and become more individualistic and seek out a greater skill set other than what he had already known. Another crisis during this time was the transfer from the private school that he had gone to throughout the years to the public school that was going to allow him to have a more well-rounded reputation, as well as a new environment with new peers in a new place, far from what he was used to. He explained that he often sought after being a part of something bigger than him. Another direct quote from my interviewee. He talked a lot about also, quote unquote, needing a purpose. He felt as though whatever it was that he was doing needed to be something larger than just for himself and just for his family and community. It was a sense of urgency to kind of do more and be more on a greater scale. Kind of thinking outside of his environment and just his experiences. It was really more of his innate interest and wonder in his identity and his abilities. This change, really allowed him to self-recognize and self-realize who he was and how the decisions that he was making currently were going to shape his future and his goals. And within this time, with all of that being said, again, for my annotated bibliography, I researched into emotional clarity, where he definitely presented to be emotionally clear, confident, and intelligent emotionally, really seeking his skill set and utilizing the morals that he had instilled in him from a young age, to kind of bring him closer to an understanding of who he really was. Diversity and difference. My interviewee was raised in a safe neighborhood within a small New York community. He explained having very, very solid family ties. He was raised and was a practicing Christian, attending a private Catholic school until the high school age, within this stage of development. And he felt as though he needed a strong identity during this time. Educationally, he felt as though he was given a strict education and firm rules that were going to be the foundation of his life that came not just from textbooks, but also coming from his faith. He felt as though that really absolutely helped him to formulate into the person that he had become later on in life and even to this very day. His social class and his relationships with people in his community, he felt as though he never viewed anyone else to be any better or less than him in any way. He felt that the way he was raised was like everyone around him, and that although people may have had more or less than him, that he was appreciative of what he did have and that he wanted to earn and to be a hard worker. He saw both sides of a social situation in the community where he saw being involved in having friendships with people who were actually in organized crime, but also people who worked in the police force and in the fire department, and had strong ties on all spectrums of the community. And so he was able to kind of take information from each place and decide kind of what he wanted to do with his own future based on what he knew as well as what he had been raised with his faith and in his home. Considering he had the reputation of being a fighter, often teachers in school didn't invest much in him, considering he was a troublemaker. He had the relationships with the mob, like I talked about, the organized crime. He had been addressed on several occasions if he would like to become part of their organized crime group because of the skill set that he did have and because of the intimidation from peers in his community. But he always felt that he knew that was not the direction that he needed to choose in his life, and that although he had relationships with these people and respected them on a level of feeling safe or feeling as though they liked him and he appealed to getting recognition from others, that was not something he strove for. He did say that he often felt lost or stuck in his situation prior to moving schools because he felt as though he didn't have the ability to kind of branch out until that time. Okay, as far as a multi-systems lens is the larger social forces and the larger institutions and things that really impacted him seem to be, well, number one is I think the educational system for him, the school institution and the church had definitely a major impact on his self-identity, on his relationships, and kind of his identity formation as this developmental stage moved forward for him. I also believe that having close family on both the police force and the fire department definitely facilitated in his interest to give back to the community and to kind of work towards earning his way into a career, especially ones with benefits and ones that were safe for a family. And I definitely feel as though, his community offered him many systems like programs that he was involved in. He had been in a program where he was able to learn how to become a car mechanic, and close family friends allowed him to work in their shop. So this also afforded him the ability to earn money and to learn a trade that was very valuable and skillful in his community. That actually took him to his first couple of jobs in the military shortly after high school. He definitely was very cultured when it came to utilizing what was available to him within his community, within his culture, within his family, and within the institutions that he belonged to. The second theory that I chose to briefly discuss that applied to my interviewee during the adolescent years was Piaget's theory of cognitive development, which describes how people develop their capacities to think, learn, and process information from birth throughout their teen years. I chose to discuss openly the formal operation stage, which spans from ages 11 to 16 years, in which children learn to use hypothetical deductive reasoning. This is the stage and age group of adolescence which my interviewee is in, and it's the time of development of logical thinking and problem solving. I think that's very appropriate, considering my interviewee's ability to reason appropriately, problem solve, and come to conclusions in such a great individualistic way as he seemed to.